Hello and welcome to Find It on this Wednesday evening. Boy, you are in for a treat. I have been emotional about this all week for such good reasons. It's very inspiring. But before we bring our guest on and talk about her, I just want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by Studio 11 Style. And if you don't know about it, it is my business and it is an online boutique and it's a lot more than fashion. Learn more about that. This is the free app. You can go into your app store and type in Studio 11 Style and make sure you have notifications on so you don't miss a thing. Okay, so tonight my guest is Britni Brown. And she is a bright light in so many ways. And she's been through it, but she's come out the other side and she has a story to tell. So we're going to do it a little differently tonight. She's going to come on and I'm going to scoot all the way over. I want her to have full screen. She's with me in studio tonight. And she's just going to tell you like a very, very much a summary of her life because there's so much to it. But then I'll come back and we'll ask questions. And I encourage you to ask her questions or offer support and say hello tonight. And if you don't mind, why don't you share this episode out? Because I have a feeling there's some people that would benefit from hearing this. So please share this out on your own page. And with that, we're going to bring Britni right back up as soon as we show her intro. So we'll be right back with you. And you're on.
Hello, my name is Britni Brown. I am here with you guys tonight with Debbie, and I want to let you all know, Debbie said that questions can happen. Nothing is too personal, so if for some reason you want to ask something and you are worried about it being too personal or hurting my feelings or making me emotional, please don't worry about that. If I don't want to answer it, I'll just tell you that I can't do that. So I'm going to share my story and start from the beginning of what I remember. So when I was just about 5 years old, I was taken from my biological parents. I have a younger brother, Logan, and an older brother, Brandon, and we all lived together with my mom and my dad. My youngest memory was playing with my brothers. Logan and I would play Big Bad Wolf, and that was something that we did all the time. I was Little Red, he was the Big Bad Wolf. I feel like that still happens today. He's still the Big Bad Wolf. I'm pretty sure he's watching too. So
Hi, Logan.
Hi, Logan. When I was just 5, I woke up one morning and my mom was gone. I slept with her almost every night. And so when I woke up, I was really afraid, because I was used to her being there and she wasn't that night. So I went out. We lived in an apartment. And so when I went out, I started looking for her and I could not find her. So I went to some of the neighbors' homes and asked them. And then the next thing I know, the police were there and they were taking us to the police station and then later to a foster home when we were able to go to that. We were in many foster homes along the years. We were in foster care, Logan, Brandon, and I, for 12 years. Logan and I were together the entire time. There was 1 month that we had been split up, but for the most of our lives, Logan and I were together. Brandon got displaced from us after our first foster, or I think our second foster home. Brandon was 6 years older than I am, and Logan and I were just a year and a half apart. So we were close and we fought all the time. When we got to our first foster home, it was just a temporary home. So we were only going to be there for a little while until they could find us a more permanent placement. In the time that we were in those 12 years, we were in 27 different foster homes. Some of those homes were just to be overnight. Some of those were vacation homes, so our foster parents could go on vacation. Um, so those are more like babysitting homes. Um, some of the foster homes that we were in were not so great. There was a lot of abuse in the foster homes. Um, there was a lot of emotional maltreatment. Um, but then we also had foster homes that felt just like family to us. Um, so in those homes, like I said, we remained together, Logan and I, and we went from home to home. Nothing really felt permanent to us. Um, we didn't call the parents' mom and dad. Um, we kind of just didn't have that feel. And we didn't really think that we were going to get adopted. Um, we did go back to our biological father. Logan and I did for a year. That year we were homeless. We lived in different drug homes. Um, we really weren't safe at all. So there was a lot of struggle during those years, or that year that we were with him. When we got placed back into foster care, my older brother, Brandon, who had lived in a different home than us, he had requested that we be put back in foster care with him if we were to ever go back into foster care. So we did. We got to be placed with Brandon. We went to earlier we before we had went to my biological dad's home. We had been with a family that we had helped one of my foster brothers transition into, and they were a really good family, and we wanted to be adopted then. Um, but we ended up being moved. So when we went to Brandon's, we lived there for 4 years with him. Brandon and Logan had a great relationship. They were super, super close. They bonded very, very quickly, and it was almost like they had never really been apart. Um, Brandon and I had a lot more of a strained relationship, which I struggled a lot with because I had this desire to have such a great relationship with him. But I think that he was a little bit more afraid of that. So we he ended up getting kicked out of that home after he turned 18. Brandon aged out of the foster care system, and um, it for Brandon ended very badly. Brandon became very much of what a statistic is, of a foster kid who ages out of the system. Um, he engaged with friends that weren't great. He started using drugs, and he ended up going to Mexico, and he got in a lot of trouble there. He ended up going to prison, and in prison, Brandon got killed. Um,
Oh, God.
and when he there was a whole lot of things that happened during that time. So the foster family that we had lived with, we ended up getting moved 2 weeks after Brandon had passed, and we did his funeral and all of the things involved in that. But what I want you guys to take from Brandon is that, as I said, he very much was what you see as a statistic of a foster kid who turns 18, doesn't have much support, and kind of lands out on the street to find their own way. Brandon didn't have a CASA. Brandon didn't have a guardian ad litem, and neither did Logan or myself. So we didn't have much time to grieve Brandon's death because we were moved from that home to another home, and then we went to another home. Hi, Sherry. And then we went to yet another home. So we had been in 3 different placements during that same exact time. So we didn't really have time to think about that grief. And then Logan got separated from the placement that I was in. And that was really tough for me, because Logan had been there through every home that I'd ever been in. He was my constant, he was my stability. And then he wasn't. So when he went to the home that he had went to, he got to go back to the home that I had told you guys about before, where we helped our foster brother transition into. And little did we know that was going to be the home that would adopt us. During the day, for me, having Logan wasn't always at the forefront of my mind, because for the first time in this foster home, I was living it up. I got to be doted on and got everything that a little 14-year-old girl could dream of for the first time, that I could really, really remember getting it all. And so through the day, I was okay with that, I thought. But at night, it hit me that I was separated from my brother, and that hurt was significant. And that too is something that happens in foster system, is that it is very uncommon for children to be placed with their siblings, especially today, because there are so many children in foster care, and there's more kids than there are homes. So they don't get to be together very often. So the home that Logan ended up going to, that I told you we got adopted into, I got to go to just a couple months later. And that was my mom and dad, DJ and Karen, and they were a great family. They took in sibling groups of many. So I think that there were 3 different sibling groups that they had taken in, if I remember right. And they were just great. But I only got to be there for 2 years. So as lucky as I felt to finally have my forever home, it was short-lived, because I was an adult now, and I was going off to college, and I was, doing dumb teenage things that I think a lot of people do. And so it felt very short and taken. So that's a lot of my story summarized into one whole.
I'm going to come on over because I have a lot of questions. That's a shocker, right, y'all? Does anyone else have questions? But I want to say, how rare is it to get adopted at the age of 16? I mean, most of the time when it's babies that are being adopted. So it's pretty rare. Sherry is watching right now, and Sherry was an advocate for you, to you, before there was really a CASA, which CASA stands for what?
Court Appointed Special Advocate.
Court Appointed Special Advocate. So it's being an advocate for a child.
Correct.
So Sherry was kind of a CASA before there was a CASA, because she had somehow, Sherry Smitley, magical woman that she is, kind of got that adoption to happen for you. Mm-hmm. However she did it, we don't know. But also I want to say hi to Lynn Bunstein. I see her on here. If you guys want to come in and say hi, so we all know you're here. So thanks, Sherry, for that. But that's very rare to get adopted at that age. But I did not know 27 different foster homes and probably different schools.
Yeah.
Okay. So what type of relationship do you, I believe, have a relationship with your biological mother now?
I do, yeah.
How did you reconnect with her?
When I turned 18, I was determined that I was going to go and I was going to ask her all the questions that I had. And at that time, I was really angry. I didn't go there for a great visit. I wanted to go there because I had questions. I had a lot of blame. I had a lot of anger and sadness. And I remember my brother telling me I was in Texas airport because my biological mom lives out of state, and I was in the Texas airport, and my brother Logan said, "Brittany, you are not going there to get answers. You're going there to get excuses." And
Hmm.
I was not ready to accept that. So I was like, "No, I'm getting answers. So don't you worry about what you think, but that's what I'm going to do." Um, and when I went, I did get answers. And so I still was angry when I left, too, because I don't know, I didn't feel at that time that I had the answers that I thought I knew already. So that was really difficult, because I thought I knew it all. I thought I already knew every part of my story, and nobody could tell me different because that's what I knew. Um, but now my relationship with her is a lot better. It's a lot different. I think she's grown and she's a lot better, than what she's ever been, and I have a
What
good
do you
relationship.
think that, what have you, through this whole process of then, I don't know how many people eventually, I think a lot, I would think a lot of people who have been adopted eventually kind of want to know where they came from. But what do you think, and if you don't want to answer, of course, just shoot me down on this, but what do you think the issues were with your parents that got you taken away from them?
So the issues that my parents had at the time was substance abuse issues. So they were doing drugs, and at that time the drugs were overtaking them. So
Hmm.
they couldn't overcome that addiction to find that my brother and I were more important. And that's just how addiction is. And I've learned that a lot,
Yeah.
in my current career. And I think that that has been extremely healing for me,
Hmm.
to understand that system and to understand addiction and just be more educated on all of that.
Well, that leads me to my next thing. I want to go back to some of this, but since you talked about what you do now, I want you to explain to us. So, the beauty in this is that she isn't angry anymore. She is a bright light. She is empathetic and an amazing person to be around, I have found. And this that she has gone through led you to your career path, which is what?
So I am now the CASA program director. And it's really kind of funny how that happened. It wasn't meant, I guess it was meant to be, but I didn't go seeking it. In 2019, I heard about CASA. I don't remember how, probably Facebook. And I was determined that I was going to become a volunteer. So I wanted to speak on behalf of kids that went through the similar situations as what I have went through, um, and explain to them that they can be more, that they don't have to be the
Hmm.
statistics,
Hmm.
um, and just have a voice inside the court. And so that turned into, in 2023, Sherry had reached out to me, and the volunteer, or the director at that time, she reached out to me and she said, "Hey, somebody gave me your name, and we have a volunteer coordinator position, that we just got granted, and we want you to be the person." And I was like, "I just had a baby 4 months ago. There's no way I can do that." And and it just happened. I talked to my husband, and he was like, "I think that that would be a perfect position for you, um, if you want to do it, but we also have a brand new baby, so let's also think about that too."
Hmm.
Um, and so a couple months after that, our director, I think it was like 3 months later, our director, she ended up having to resign, due to personal things in her life. And Sherry was like, "All right, you're going to have to step into this director position." And I was like, "I don't even know how to be the volunteer coordinator yet. Like, I'm not sure how to be a director of anything." And she's like, "You're going to just keep doing what you've been doing. And, I'm going to help you along the way." And I was like, "Okay." So, and that's how we've been doing it.
So what do you offer in this position that you think is very unique to probably anyone else who has had that? Are you the only one who lived that life that's been in this role here locally?
So, in talking to Ohio CASA, I did ask them if there is any other directors that have been in
System.
the system, and they said that I am the only one that they know of in the state of Ohio that has been in foster care. One of my first meetings that I went
That
to
gives
as a
me chills.
volunteer coordinator, um, the president of Ohio CASA, he said, "Man, I really wish that there was somebody in our, like on our level, who knew what it was like to be in care." And this is my first meeting, and I'm just sitting there like, I don't want to say anything. I don't want it to be me. And the
Aw.
CASA for my parents, like my younger siblings, she was sitting next to me and she's like, "Brittany, you have to tell him it's you."
Ew.
And I was like, this is my first meeting. I'm not telling everybody in this room that I was in foster care. Like, I don't think I need to do that. And she was like, "You're going to tell him or I'm going to tell him." And I was like, I was like, Mr. Stevens, it's me. I'm the one. So,
Mhm.
it's been a blessing, and I'm very humbled to be the person to be able to give a little bit of light of what it's like to be in foster care. Sometimes it's very intimidating, and sometimes Sherry has to set me down and say,
Yeah. She's
"Let's
a good one to do
chill."
that too, because she can put some perspective into things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And be a little tough when she needs to be like, listen, you got to do, just like this role. I mean,
Yes.
she helped you find that courage to do it. But is that role for you? Do you ever get with these kids and you see yourself as that triggering to you?
I think it is. Sometimes I don't see the trigger as much as other people see the trigger because I just am like, man, that made me angry or that made me mad. Or
Yeah.
I get really emotional about it. But to me, in my heart, I feel like that's just me being empathetic.
Yeah.
Whereas other people, Sherry, my counselor, people
Hmm.
who, they may say, no, that was a trigger. So you having an emotional response to that is the trigger.
And you're probably used to pushing things down and just going on
Mhm,
because you had to do it 27 times, different families, different.
mhm.
And I am really curious. Like you mentioned in your intro that some of your experiences in foster care, the foster homes you went to weren't always safe or the
Right,
best, right?
right.
I mean, so how has that changed from when you were a young girl? You're so young, but to now, like, are we making strides in the system to help keep these kids safe or to keep them nurtured the way that they should be?
So, yeah, I mean, we live in a very flawed world, so I think that there's going to be flaws in homes for
Mhm.
sure. But I think that our children's services, I can only speak to Ross County because I don't work with
Mhm.
the other counties. But I can say since I've been here, they have done a phenomenal job of trying to um, keep up with that. But I think that one of the most important things is that with CASA, it helps keep that extra eye inside the home. So we get to go, one thing that CASA does is that we get to go into schools and talk to kids about their concerns or just build those relationships with them. So if something
Mhm.
were to be going on in the home, then we're in a neutral ground. They don't have to worry about anybody being there to
That's good.
to
So they may tell you
upset.
something that they wouldn't tell because you have people that go into the home and
Yeah,
check things out, but they might not say, "Hey, by the way, I don't feel safe
right.
here." But if you go to their school where they're isolated a little bit from, then they'll say,
Yeah, so we find a lot of times that being able to meet them in a neutral place, that they are able to express themselves more freely.
"That's good."
We do go to the home as well. And like I said, we've been in homes that we have been able to contact children's services and be like, "Oh, that
It's not
there's
good.
something going on there," or
Do you
and
feel
they
like you
go
haven't do you
immediately.
feel like you have more of an intuition even if you it's almost like if you've lived it and I haven't, and then we go into a place you can recognize things that maybe I wouldn't because of your background.
I think that there's definitely times that I um can talk to a kid and I can feel that from them. or go into a situation and I'm like, I don't know about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a couple of times been able to do that. But and what I really respect about our children's services is that they do have a respect for our CASA program. And I know a lot of people have not the best view of children's services, especially the families, right? Because obviously they're the bad guys in their
Yeah.
eyes. And so we have that good relationship with them. So being able to tell them like, let's use this time as a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the worst time of your life, but let's use it for all that we can.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I really try to encourage people in that. But I mean, I think that because we do have a good working relationship with our children's services, that if there's something that we just say, like, hey, listen, I feel like there's something going on, they're very reactive to it. Like they're able to get in and say,
That's good to hear.
something's
That's
going
really
on.
good to hear. I think it's also very interesting too that you're on this career path doing what you're doing. You have spoken in front of crowds before to help kids. I mean, kids are going to be able to when they know that you've lived the life that they
Hmm.
have, they're going to listen to you. They're going to listen to me. They're going to really think, "Oh my gosh,
Well,
Britni has been through this."
yeah, and I try really hard to share, like, that's one thing that I do with the kids that I advocate with is I do tell them, I mean, I don't sit down and have a
Mhm.
whole conversation about what happened in my life because that's not important for them. But I
Mhm.
do share that I have been through similar things as them and I do understand to some level. And so we do have conversations about that. And I have found with some kids that they will change completely the way that they talk whenever they know that
Mhm.
she's not just here because
Yeah, it makes total I mean it's makes total sense. I want to say to Sherry though, Sherry, how cool is it that you were an advocate for her and now you guys work together? This is a beautiful story. And it's also a beautiful story to know that you worked through your anger and through your sadness and your abandonment issues perhaps. And you've come out the other side to be able to use what you know and help other people and still have a good vibe about you. What do you think you've done? If there's a kid watching today and they think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be like Brandon. How can I mean, the thing that I don't understand is it's sad to me. At 18, I don't even know what I'm doing right now, people. At 18, I surely the heck didn't know. Like, how do you just say, well, you got to go. You're done. You're an adult, and then it's more even like the nurturing and the love to know I'll always be here. Like with a family that,
mhm,
biological, typically, if you're in foster care, you just move to that number. You get 18 candles on your cake and then you're done. So how do you help children young adults now, right? To understand, you told me that you knew I'm not going to get adopted, and you just had your mindset that you knew you were going to be on your own.
mhm.
So, do you think that's kind of what they all do?
Um, I think that they get really afraid at like 16.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, the way that Children's Services starts doing things is that once a kid turns 16, they start doing more independent living. They don't really look for the adoptive home. So earlier we were talking about how it's rare to be adopted at 16. Um, it's rare. Like it's great if it happens, but it don't happen very often. And
Mm-hmm.
so we start looking more at an independent living route for the kids that are that age. Um, and in that, we have more resources than we did
Mm-hmm.
when Brandon was 18. And I'm very thankful for that. So there's Bridges now. I don't think that Bridges was a thing
Okay.
then. So that's kind of like a fill in the gap
Okay.
to kind of, so you're not just thrown out onto the street,
Yeah.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's Foster Hub. So that's a brand new program that's getting ready to launch, I think in May, if I remember correctly.
That's
May
cool.
2026, I think that they should be
That's
opening
cool.
their doors, and they will have a place to be able to move a child from 18, maybe even 17, into their building, and they start teaching them independent living skills right away.
That's good.
And so it really builds in that gap.
I wanted to know too, what you are a mom now, right? You've been
Yes,
how old are your kids?
2 and 5.
2 and 5. And what does that mean to you? And I believe you've said that can sometimes be triggering. And tell us how.
So after all of the things that I've gone through, I think, I've been sad, I've been mad, I've been all of the things. And I think becoming a mom, I started wondering why. And I didn't understand how. I've thankfully never had to live through addiction myself.
So when you say you wondered after you were a mom, you started wondering how. You started wondering how a mom and dad could let their children be taken.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So because I've never went through that life of understanding addiction, I couldn't really make sense of how a parent could make that choice and choose, their drug over their child. And I think that it has been very triggering for me as a parent, especially now because my kids are the age that I was whenever my
Mm.
parents had left. And so um, it has definitely hit a lot different than it did at all throughout my life. And I think there's been different stages of trying to understand and grieve and all of that, because even though my parents aren't dead, I still lost them. There was still that time of it feels kind of the same,
Mhm.
of losing somebody. And so I think having my 2 kids and loving them, and they have so many similarities to what me and my brother had, and some of the things that we even did with my mom and dad, my biological parents, like my little boy, he holds my arm like I did my mom, and my little girl, she plays with my ear like my dad did with us. And so it's very
Mm.
interesting, just those biological things that happen. And but yeah, my
I
kids
was
are.
going to ask you that. Like, you do have memories. You and your brother have memories being with your parents. And what those memories were, did you feel good, bad, indifferent? What?
um in talking to my brother, he doesn't remember as much about our biological parents. But I do have a lot, and I have both. I have good memories and bad. There's times that, like, I remember Christmas with them, and I remember Easter with them. And like I told you about the me and Logan playing the Big Bad Wolf
Oh, yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
Little Red, like those were from that time too. So like there's still memories that I have being at my biological home originally. Um, but I think I have just as many good memories as I do bad memories,
Mhm.
but I think that the bad memories are the ones that have pushed me to be more of who I am and made this whole thing full circle.
Right.
So,
Right. That is really
yeah.
so. I know later in life too, you found faith in God. Tell us a little bit about that, how that journey getting there.
So, it was, I think I was in the 5th grade. I went to church when I was young. It was just part of what we did as the family that I lived with. Um, and I had fun doing that. I enjoyed church. But it wasn't really until I was, I think, in like the 5th or 6th grade, that I joined the FCS group at school, and I wanted to know a little bit more about who God was and all of that. And that was just about the same time that my brother had been killed. And so I went to church as an escape from the home life that I lived. Um, it was just not good there. And so one of our friends, she had taken us to church on Wednesdays. I don't remember if we went on Sundays, but I know on Wednesdays we went, and we had a blast, and people hugged us and people loved us, and they always wanted
Mm.
us to come back, and
You
we looked
wanted the
forward to
nurturing, the
that.
hugs felt good. You
Yeah.
felt that love from them, right?
Yeah.
That's
And the
so
desire to be wanted, I think, really was like the biggest thing in that, is like they really truly wanted us to come back every week. And
aw.
we looked forward to that. And then Brandon passed away. And I wanted nothing to do with God anymore. I couldn't trust him. I felt like he had failed us, just like everyone else had failed us. And I just had no desire to have that again. Um, and so I had turned away from God, and it took, I think, 3 years when we got adopted, when we moved into the home that we got adopted to. We started there, and going to church again. And I began to feel that again, that
Mhm.
love. And then I dove deeper into who God was and how merciful he was. And I went to a Christian college, and
Yeah.
after that, like, I really just understood what the purpose was in all of it, and for it to become the full circle that it was. And that was really cool to
Mhm.
be able to do that.
I love that. I love that for you. And I remember you saying, Debbie, when I was baptized. Oh, let's read this. Sherry says, there are some cases you always remember, and Brittany and Logan were one of those cases. Brittany wrote me a letter, and I still have today, almost 20 years later, being able to reconnect years later and see the growth and what she has overcome has been inspiring. Definitely. Me too. Sherry, I couldn't stop crying earlier. I was like, "Oh my gosh, she is so," because she has every reason to be an angry person if she wanted to be. And we would totally give her a free pass. But that's not the life you want to live.
Mm.
And with your own kids and loving them so much and knowing that had your parents not had the addictions that they did, that would have been them with you.
Mhm.
But you've also broken that cycle. That's not who you are, and your kids will not have that life because you are there for them.
Well, and one thing that I love is that I love it and envy it all at the same time, is that there's so many more resources now
Mhm.
than when we were younger, So, like, one of my favorite programs that our court has is our Family Dependency Treatment Court, and Judge Benson and Sherry are the people who
Yeah.
run that.
Yeah.
And it is my favorite part, because I think, if Brandon would have had this, or if my parents would have been
Right.
able to have this, like, we would have had a different story. And so I envy that, but I also don't, because as much as my life was difficult to get through, um, I wouldn't be the person that I am today without having to go through all of that stuff.
I wanted to ask you, did you say to me when we had talked last week, did people in your school know that you were a foster child?
No, no. So that's not something, at that time, I feel like nobody was a foster kid. So um,
What do you
at
mean by that?
at school, well, there wasn't anybody at my school that
That you
I
were
knew
Oh,
that
I
was a
see.
foster kid.
Okay.
So the only foster kids that we knew were at our foster care meetings. Like, they
Okay.
went to different schools than I went
Oh, I
to,
see.
at different times. I
Mhm.
mean, we may have been in the same school, but maybe we were in different grades, so we didn't really interact with each other. But at school, we called the people that we lived with, mom and dad. So to everyone else, they were mom and dad, but when we got home, we called them by their first names. Um,
Hmm.
and
Is that
so
do you think that's what kids now do? Probably?
I'd say, yeah, I'd
Because
say
they
that
don't
that's
wanna be
very,
like, "Hey."
It's also a lot more common for kids to be in foster care now.
Oh,
Billy, one of the girls that we work with, she was telling me the other day that when I was in foster care, they had like 10 dependencies. And now I think in 2024, we had
oh my gosh.
397
In Ross County?
in Ross County.
We have that
So
many kids in foster care.
some of them live with family members, but that's how many had
Or
assigned.
displaced.
That's how many we were assigned to as CASA for Ross County.
Wow. You guys, that's a lot. Wow.
So yeah, it was definitely different than it is now.
Wow, I know. I had written this down because when you were talking about memories and you were almost 5, right at the cusp of being 5 years old when you were taken from your family, did you tell me that you were living in a homeless shelter sometimes and you thought it was like daycare?
Yeah. So I think whenever I had went to when I went to OU in college, we had a class called trauma. I can't remember what it was called, trauma something, and we had to write a paper about a trauma that we had endured in our life and how we overcame that. And so I couldn't figure out which one to talk about. So I was like, you know what? I'll just write about my life, and I will talk about each home that I was in, and it helped me to be able to find healing from those because I had to find a positive. That was part of our paper, was finding a positive in every
each.
situation.
And I would say, I think writing is so cathartic. Like if
Yeah.
you journal or you just write down things it's exhausting, but you can work through things, right?
Yeah.
And this was in college.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I was writing the paper, I just told my story. It was a much longer version than what I gave today, but it was neat to go through and talk about all the places and forgiving the people and all of the things that I had gone through and why I had to go through it to come out on the other side. So I did try to find a positive in each of those places. And my professor had asked me to read it in front of the class, and I was
Oh
like,
my
"Ooh, okay."
gosh.
So I read it, and there was a gentleman up front, and he said, um, "Brittany, can I talk to you?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." So we had a conversation, and he was like, "You were in my homeless shelter as a kid. That wasn't your daycare." And I was like, "Oh, what?" And so I had no idea until I had written that paper, and so
But the likeliness of that man, he owned the homeless shelter that you lived in.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you
So,
guys.
and he knew, like, I didn't write names in the paper at all. Like, I just wrote, I think I changed everybody's name to something else. And he asked me by name of the people, and I was like, "Oh, he has to know for real then." Like, if he's telling me who I'm talking about, like, he has to have a better idea.
Wow, I'm going to see where we are on time. We're doing really well on time because Brittany and I could talk about 3 more months about all of our experiences. I'm telling you, that's crazy. I wanted to ask, so if anyone else has questions for her, go ahead and shoot those out because we're going to ask her the last question. But I think this might be extensive or not, whatever you want it to be. But at the end of every show, we ask the same question because the show is called Find It. So, what have you found in life that you can share with us so we can find it too?
The thing that I have found is that we have chapters, and in each chapter, you find something new. And I think in this chapter that I'm in now within our CASA program, I get to be the person who goes out and finds CASAs for kids, and giving them the voice and going into the homes that and building those relationships with the kids that we get to advocate for. It's not that these people are volunteers. Majority of them, we have 2 staff and the rest are volunteers. And as I said earlier, we have 397 kids that we served in 2024. Thankfully, that number has went down a tiny bit, not a lot, but we've gotten to close a couple cases. But we can't advocate for them alone. So
Mhm.
I think that what I would encourage is that somebody else find that same CASA program, whether it's in Ross County or a different county. Um, find that. And if you have a passion and a desire for kids, um, be their voice. I know one huge thing that I hear people say all the time is, "Oh, I don't know that I can do that. That's just so much. Um, I don't think that my heart could take it." And I just want to tell you that you will lighten the hearts of those kids, because if you think how hard that might be for you to do, not living it at all, just hearing about it, to be able to be that kid and and have somebody just help you carry it, um, is really going to change everything. Because even as somebody who has lived it, we live in a whole different world.
Mhm.
And it's hard. And the things that are out there are so much more difficult and scary than what they've been. And the things that these kids are having to experience and to go through them alone is the worst.
How would one get involved with being a volunteer for CASA, and what does that entail?
So to be a CASA, you have a 30-hour pre-service training that you do. Normally, we do it in about 3 weeks. And um, you get the training all completed. You swear in with the judge, and then we give you your first assignment. It sounds like a lot to some people, but really the most that you have to see at minimum is once a month be with that child, and see them face to face. That's the minimum. You have 12 hours that you have to do extended training throughout the year. That's once a
Well,
month,
yeah, so
you
just
know.
like to keep you refreshed on
Right,
what
and
yeah.
understanding the resources, things
Yeah.
like that. We have a conference in with CASA Ohio where you can do it in 3 days. They get the 12 hours.
How many people do you have volunteering right now?
Right now we have about 20, and
That's a
then
great amount, really. But I mean, you have 300 and some
yeah,
kids, so
yeah. So when we have a training in February, February 4th, that we have 8 new people wanting to join. So
nice.
we're
That's
we're
exciting.
open to having more. So if you want to be a CASA, definitely you can message us on our Facebook page, Ross County CASA. If you don't live in this state, or in the county, I mean, you can reach out to Ohio CASA, and
And
they will find you.
that's just CASA, Ohio
Yes.
CASA.
Yep. And they will find you a program that is close to you to be able to volunteer for. But I will promise you that these kids, the once a month minimum requirement, you go way beyond that. Like, you will
Mhm.
want to see those kids. You're able to go to their sporting events if they're in sports. You're able to go to the school and help advocate for them if their grades are failing, or maybe they need an
Mhm.
IEP or
Yeah.
something. You're able to be the advocate, not just in the
Wow.
courtroom, but outside of the courtroom as well.
That's so amazing. That is a
Yeah.
great I'm
So
so happy about that program, I really am. And another thing, you have a Remember Your Why shirt on. She got that from
from
here. But what is your why?
I think that going through everything that I went through as a kid, and being able to go and talk to the kids that are going through similar situations, has been such a humbling experience. And I tell these kids that I went through it. I don't hide that from them. I don't have to go through my whole life experience
Mhm.
with them, and I don't. But I do let them know that they have they don't have to be the statistic of a foster child. They can go to college if they want to go to college. They can go to a trade school. They can get a job right out of college. They don't have to follow in the path of addiction and maybe the things that they had been taken from. That they can be so much more than that, and they're capable of it.
And capable, I think that even having a CASA someone to represent, someone to advocate for you, to be able to remind them that they count and they're worthy of all these things. Oh,
Absolutely.
it kills me.
Yeah.
But one other thing is, and I know I was supposed to ask you the last question, but how did you find forgiveness for all of the people who really let you down?
I can't say that it was easy by any means, but I knew that I was going to be angry if I didn't.
Mhm.
So I had to find something for myself to be able to decide that I couldn't dwell on all the negative things that had happened, and I needed to have that forgiveness. And I also learned that just because I didn't need them to accept my forgiveness to give it. So I didn't even have to go to them and say, "Hey, can you forgive me?" Or I forgive you.
Yeah.
That I could just forgive them. Because that's what I had a really hard time with. I was like, I don't want to go see those people again. I'm a little bit afraid, maybe.
Mhm.
And so, but there were times that I did that I was kind of scared to go in and talk to them and ask them for things, and that was a big deal too. Was trying to ask for things that I needed for closure purposes, and going and saying like,
Gosh, I didn't even
"Let's
really think
help."
about that because you probably wanted answers. You wanted to ask just so you could, like you said about chapters. Okay,
Right.
now I understand that, even though it's not something that I want to hear, you needed it.
Right.
But
And I think working with children's services now and understanding the reasons for the way things happened in my life has helped really heal me, because now I know, oh, they had to do this because of that reason, or they had to tell me this because of this reason, and sometimes that's tough. But the other thing I do with the kids that I advocate for is I just am brutally honest with them. I'm not going to hurt them, but I also tell them how it is. So
well, that's
sometimes I just
refreshing.
tell them, I say, this might make you angry or it may upset you, but this is kind of why it's happening. And I think that kids very much deserve to have the answers to what's going on in their life. And that's something new that we're doing with our court too, is bringing kids into court for their own hearings so that they don't feel blinded by everyone.
So typically they aren't allowed to go into the court and then they just hear what the ruling is on their behalf. So now they're allowed to go in to see how everything, and how do you think that will benefit them versus the old way?
I think feeling as if they are seen, and not just because they're advocating on their behalf.
Okay.
But there's something stronger about being your own voice, and I think going in and knowing the person, saying, this is what the rule is, this is what I've decided, too bad, I think that
then they feel like they have
that.
like some skin in the game on what's happening to them.
Right. And I think that the other part is a lot of times our families go in and they get visitation with their parents, and their parents obviously don't want to tell them like, I messed up again, and so they tell them, oh, well, this is what happened, or this is what happened. And it's not great, so they make up their own kind of story and is like, well, the judge said this, and this is the reason you're not getting to see me, or whatever. And so if they're there, they get to know that truth of, well, there's still some work that needs to be done.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, they're feeling like the truth is being told to them, which they also probably appreciate from you. Maybe some of the things that you tell them doesn't feel good to them, but at least they know they know what's really happening.
And I have had a lot of people, as the director, one thing that I get that probably other people don't get quite as much is that people tell me about how the volunteers are doing, and that is such a blessing to me. I love when somebody comes to me and is like, man, your volunteer has done wonders in my family, and they have made such a difference in our kids, and they love them and they love to see them.
That's wonderful.
And they have answers and resources that have helped us get to the caseworker or to whoever needs to know the information.
That's amazing.
So I'd say we need CASAs, we need foster families in Ross County. If you have a hard time finding it, taking a kid into your home, maybe you could just give them a couple hours a month, and invest in them that way. We can cover court. We can do that. If you're working full time and you can't get to court, we got you. But we just need eyes on those kiddos and
That's
relationships built.
Thank you for what you do, Britni, and sharing your story. I know that it couldn't be easy, but it is your truth and it is your story, and you own that. And you've come so far, and I'm just so glad that you're here. And I wanted to say that Lynn Bunstein's with us, and she says, praise to those that help these kids. Thank you, Britni, for giving back such a need.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. So, okay, guys, I think what we're going to do, it's a wrap. We made it.
We did, with no tears.
No tears. No tears. I was over here in the corner crying.
Thank you, Sean.
All right. Well, anyway. Oh, Sean, Britni, you were such a blessing. Thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for all you're doing to change the lives of other children. Thank you so much.
And thank you to your
Sean.
husband, because he has to make those big decisions.
Yes, Judge Benson.
Thank you for giving us the ability to
make
have that responsibility of advocating for the kids and hearing us.
Yeah. He's done wonders, even like with the drug court. I hear great things about him all the time.
He'll yell at you because it's called treatment court.
Treatment court. Sorry. Treatment court. Sean doesn't have to tell him that we just said that, because he's already tall, and then his head will grow. He won't even get out of the house. That big head. Okay. So you guys, you know what? We are going to head on out of here. Thank you for joining us. You might want to share this with someone that you think it would benefit. And if nothing else, we all can benefit from hearing such a success story, that we have hope in that, and that there are more resources to help kids so they can make it into a very successful life like Britni did, and even without the resources. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you again next week, same time, different guest, or it may just be me. I have a real funny story to share with you guys, so it may just be me next week, but we'll see you regardless. So everyone have a great week, and see you next time. Sherry, thank you for hosting. Debbie, you're welcome, Sherry. So much love to you guys, and have a great rest of your week. Bye. That floats around me.